Welcome to the Coaching in a Fishbowl session. My name is Kim Day. I work for Insight Education Group as a project coach, and I'm proud to support Marion County. And I want to introduce my colleagues that are going to be working with us today. Start right here with the star of our show. Come up front, Jeannie. Come on. Come out behind the table.
I'm Jeannie Poston. I'm lead teacher at North Millings Primary, part of the Marion County School District, and this is our second year STEP implementation.
Hi everyone, I'm Selena Mahanti. I think I've met most of you multiple times by this point. I'm Selena and I work with Insight.
Excellent. So we are going to go ahead and get started. Bethany's going to be joining us. She's coming back. I think she needed a little bit of a break. So please, you guys know Insight, we love to tell our story. And the only way for us to do this is to take pictures, tweet those things out, let us like what you're tweeting out. We're tweeting out pictures as well. So please, take as many pictures as you want. You're not going to bother us. Take some pictures of Selena. All right. So what I want you to do first is on your tables, you should have the packet, the participant guide, and make sure everybody has a copy. If you haven't noticed this yet in a session since you've been here with us, in the bottom right-hand corner of our slides, there's a little page and a number that indicates a page in the participant guide. So make sure if you see something up there that's not in the participant guide, if you want to take a picture of it, feel free to do that, okay? All right, next thing I want to say, raise your hands if you are an E3 district. Look around the room, look at the folks who don't have their hands raised. If they're at your table, you are taking care of them. Help me. If I say something that's a STEP acronym, clarify that. I'll try to do that. Jeannie and Selena will all try to do that. So if we say STEP, that means what? STEP's a type of what? PLC. If we say ILT, that means what?
Leadership.
Leadership team. I don't know that anything else is going to be tougher than that. So we'll try to make sure that everybody's on the same page with that. So take a minute, and I want you to yourself, take 30 seconds, read our outcomes for our session today, and I want you to think about, why are you here? What is something you want to get out of our session today? 30 seconds to yourself. I'll let you know when that's up. When you're ready, turn and tell somebody next to you something you want to get out of this session today. Come on, girls. Come on out from behind. Turn and tell somebody what you want to get out of this session today.
Okay.
All righty. Let's come back together in 3, 2. Well, you guys are good. All right. Can I get 1 or 2 people just to share with us something you heard your partner say? What is something that you want to get out of this session today? Yes, sir. Go ahead.
My partner, he's a lead teacher, and he's got a new teacher that just came in his building, and he wants to help coach him on some strategies to help him just with his teacher's growth, and just a lot of class management things. So he just wants some tips and things in regards to that.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. All right, one other person. Who's willing to share something they heard their partner say? Paul?
Deborah and I are at the district level. A week ago, we talked about how we wanted to come. So when we're doing teacher observations to the 4.0 rubric of how we can coach better for those teachers.
Absolutely, and I appreciate you guys being here for that. Excellent. All right, so as we go through the session today, I want you to check in with the person that you spoke to. How's it coming? Is what we're doing helping them? Ask them some prompting questions to get them to think about their new learning. So in your packet, you also have an agenda. This is our roadmap. So take a minute, and I want you to look at it, and well, not even a minute. Take like 15 seconds, and when you're done looking, if you're okay with the roadmap, let me see a thumbs up. Are we okay with the roadmap? We okay with the roadmap? All right, what do you notice? What's the next to last bullet on our roadmap? Next steps. If you don't leave here with a next step, then I have failed you. Okay? So my goal is for you to take something away. So we just heard what you want to get out of this. You're going to have a little bit of time at the end. That's the important piece. What's going to be the action step that results from your new learning today? So that's our goal, to get you a next step. All right, so without anything else being said, here's what I'm going to ask you to do. Will you stand up and push your chair in? You didn't think you were going to sit through this, did you? All right, here are the rules. We are going to do a mix the room. remember, part of the premise of our work together at this session or at this workshop is networking and meeting new folks and making connections, because that's how we learn best and we can support one another in that way. So we're going to start the music, and when the music plays, you're going to move around the room. When Bethany stops the music, you're going to find the person closest to you, and you're going to introduce yourself, your name, give your role, what school you're in. You have in your participant guide a place to jot this down. Oh, my slide keeps going. Sorry, Bethany. You have a place in your participant guide to jot this down, or just take a picture of the name badge. All right? Whatever makes it easiest for you. So you decide and get the materials that you need. All right? So we're going to let, can you put the slide back, please? It's got directions on it. So I want them to know what the next step is. That's okay. You leave it right there. So the first question that's going to come up is, what do you want from a coaching session? Okay? So you're going to talk with your partner about a minute or two around what do you want from a coaching session. Then we're going to debrief that. And then Bethany's going to play the music one more time. You're going to move one more time. And then you're going to answer the second question. What do you not want from a coaching session? Okay? All right. Bethany, you can, if you want to put it back to your slide, do you need to? Okay. All right. Move it. Music's moving, and it's not going to stop until you get away from your table. Keep moving. Keep moving. All right, whenever you want to stop it, Bethany. You stop it? Okay. Keep moving until she stops it. All right, find somebody close. Preferably somebody you don't know. That's fine, that's fine. Or, there you go.
And so just...
All right. Coming back together in 3, 2, 1. Awesome. So let's hear from the room. What are a couple of the things that your partner said? I don't want to hear what you said. I want you to share something you heard your partner say. From a coaching experience, what is something you want? Yes, ma'am. Paula.
It's not about the negative, it's about how we can grow, and what that teachers, we want teachers to take away what they can do, how they can grow from it. That's not the negative, it's not what you didn't do, it's not I got you, it's how can we grow.
Focused on growth. Excellent. Love it. Somebody else. Deborah.
The questions that are posed to cause me to go into deeper thinking.
Guiding that teacher or person that you're coaching to self-reflect. And just a side note, in the coaching session you're going to see today, you're going to see a coaching session with a lead teacher who's the coaching session is around her PLC. But that's not the point. It's about the process. So it doesn't matter what role you're in. If you're in here, you're a principal, you're district level folks, you're a teacher, you're a mentor teacher, you're a lead teacher. Okay? Anybody can be sitting on the coaching side, and anybody can be sitting in the coaching seat. All right, so let's keep that in mind. All right, somebody else.
Mark talked about not wanting it to be only one side. I mean, an actual conversation involving two voices, if you will, and not him doing all of the talking and the teacher just passively sitting there.
So I'm hearing two things in what Will is saying. Number one, the person being coached should be doing the majority of the talking, right? Secondly, he wants it to be collaborative. That's kind of what I heard you say, right? So the person being coached does the majority of the talking. Number two, the session is collaborative. It's not just, I got all the answers and I'm going to tell you what to do, how to fix you, right? Somebody else. Yes, sir.
So just to build on that, the goal should be to build professional capacity. Like as a teacher, we're just working, we're trying to build skills and capacity in them so that we're not revisiting the same action step and building our own professional repertoire.
Love what you're saying. What does that mean about the person doing the coaching? What kind of a mindset do they need to have, the person doing the coaching?
Well, I would hope that it would be more of a long-term vision for what we value in school and instruction and the kind of line to those.
Growth mindset, right? Absolutely, growth mindset. The person doing the coaching, we have to have a growth mindset about the person sitting in front of us, absolutely. The second thing that I heard, tell me your first name, please. The second thing I heard Nick say is, when we come to the table as the coach, we need to come with some suggestions for growth, right? How can we help this person move forward? What is the next step for their instruction, okay? Again, heard me say choices. We have to have more than one suggestion. Sometimes that person can come, and in that collaborative conversation, they might come to a realization on their own through that conversation. But if not, we need to be prepared with a couple of possibilities. Why would I say a couple of possibilities instead of just one thing that I need you to do this? Why would I not say this to him? Ownership, right? Because if I tell Jason, do X, Y, and Z, and it doesn't work, what happens? Yeah, I am. It's not, it's, right, exactly. All right, one more person. Come on, be brave.
Mandy says she just wants to get better.
Okay, all right, getting better. Let's see how we did. Take a look. Not too bad, right? All right, so align to the instructional vision at the school. What is your problem of practice? What are your rocks? But also, how does helping Jason, who's now my model here, how does helping Jason grow in this, how is that going to support these other things, right? All right, so Bethany, would you mind playing the music? Round 2, here are the new rules. Can't meet with anybody from your school. It can be the district if you don't work with that person, and can't be somebody you've already met with at this conference. All right, let's go. All righty, coming back together in 3, 2, and 1. You guys are really good. All right, let's hear from the room. Somebody we didn't hear from earlier. What's something you do not want? I see a hand up, I think, back there. Kimmy, who are you talking to? I see a hand up back there. Oh, yeah, Sarah. I couldn't see your face back there. Sarah, was your hand up?
Marble County, and she said what she does not want is to be that only person actively talking. And she doesn't want to be the only one doing the work. She wants that same effort from the teacher that she has.
Okay. So the question is really, how do we make it really collaborative? Being aware of that. Excellent. Yes, ma'am.
Sharon said she didn't want the teachers to feel like she was the expert, like making sure that she knew it all. She did not want to come off as the know-it-all.
Absolutely. And I think how we portray ourselves has a lot to do with the receptiveness of the person in front of us. Do we come off as the know-it-all, or do we come off as a lead learner, right? I don't know it all. I'm going to help. We're going to figure this out together, right? That goes a long way for building that rapport and the willingness for that person to be receptive to the support and to come back and ask for support, not just you having to go find them. All right, excellent. Somebody else. Yes, ma'am.
Laura from Marlborough County didn't want her teachers walking away looking at her suggestions as a checklist. She wants them to be more invested in why they're doing it.
Key point, knowing what the why is of what we're doing, and how as coaches are we communicating the why in our coaching conversations. Excellent point. One more. I see a hand way back there. Yes, sir.
Aaron brought up a very good point that we definitely don't want it to be evaluative or feel evaluative.
Excellent point, right? Coaching is not about checking a box to say you talked to somebody. It's not just about sending feedback in an email, right? Support and coaching looks very different. And so I want you to keep that lens as we go through today, okay? We're going to give you some context, how we actually measure impactfulness of a coaching session. We're going to do that actually right now. We'll give you some context of the coaching scenario you're going to see. And then we're going to do just like we did if you were in here in the earlier session. We're going to talk about what you notice. All right, will you thank your partners? And I thank you guys. Have a seat. So how did we do? As you move back to your seat, take a look at the screen. Whoop, there it goes. How did we do? Is there anything we missed? As you look at the screen, is there anything we missed? Speak up, I can't hear you.
They're way too long after observation.
Way too long, right? What's best practice? What's kind of the rule of thumb? What's best when it can happen? Immediately. Kind of the rule of thumb is no more than how many hours? 24 to 48, right? Because really, after that, who remembers? Okay? All right. So as we go forward today, we want to think about these things, but we want to give you a context for what it should look like. So in your participant guide, will you please turn to page 5? there's a rubric. It is called the Coaching for Change rubric. And I'm going to modify this a little bit. We originally had you getting up, but I think for the interest of time, we're going to adjust the instructions. So here's what I want you to do. We're going to assign each table only one of these core coaching competencies. There are 3 of them. So, Selena, will you tell each table which one they're going to focus on? Because you don't have time to focus on every one right now.
These 2 tables and these 2 tables are going to be the first competency, which is facilitation of a reflective and growth-oriented mindset. These 2 tables are going to be the second one, which is expertise and credibility. And these 2 back tables are going to be the last one, which is coaching behavior.
Okay, so what is it you're supposed to do with those? We want you to look through that, read over it, and we want you to think about, well, what does this core competency actually look like in action? What would I actually see and hear in a coaching situation? What would the coach be saying? What would the person being coached be saying? So you've got, on page 6, let me see. Page 6, there's a chart if you want a chart to take notes. I'm not asking people to highlight. Some of you have seen this before. So at your table, talk about what you're noticing within that core competency. Specifically, what would you see and hear the coach and the person being coached seeing and doing? Saying and doing. I guess that's what I should say, saying and doing. So take a minute to review it and then have that conversation. What would we see and hear? Just related to that core competency. Take 2 or 3 minutes. Okay, let me bring you back together for about 4 seconds. Coming back together in 3, 2, and 1. Since we're not going to chart this, here's what I'd like for us to do. I'm going to give you a little bit more time. But what I would like for you to do at your tables, based on the conversation, what is your table's big takeaway around your core competency? So for example, this group, they have the very first one, facilitation of a reflective and growth-oriented mindset. So as they're talking, what I want them to do is come to consensus on what's the one big thing that they would see and hear. And they're going to end up sharing that with the group. Since we have multiple tables for each of these, we're going to ask each group to share just one big takeaway. So this group would share their one big thing that they think is most important. This is what we would see and hear from the coach and the person being coached around just that one criterion, okay? So take about 2 more minutes, just come to consensus and I'll identify the person who's going to share out. How about that? All right. If we can bring it back together, if you'll wrap up your conversations. All right, so let's hear from the first criterion, the facilitation of a reflective and growth-oriented mindset, those groups. So I believe, Selena, help me out, was this table, this table, this table? These 3. All right, so let's start with you guys. What's the one thing that you guys kind of came to consensus on what you would expect to see and hear as it relates to that particular criterion?
Okay, so from the coaching aspect, we would expect to hear the coach ask strategically planned questions that are evidence-based from the observation.
Okay.
And then from the coachee, we wanted to see them to be self-reflective and also aligning the reflection to student outcome.
Absolutely. So strategically planned questions, right? And then aligning those questions guide the person being coached to self-reflect and tying what they're talking about to how that's going to impact kids. Did I get it? Excellent. All right. Thank you. All right. This table, Mr. Vish, Jessica.
Our biggest takeaway goes on the coach, the coaching side with self-reflection.
Okay.
Because you can have a teacher evidence, you can have to ask the right questions, but the coaching needs to be able to self-reflect on their lesson and be able to understand what their next steps are.
Okay. So if by the end of the session, the person being coached can talk about what it is we've talked about, what were some of the strengths, the growth points, and what they're going to do next in collaboration with the coach. Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. All right, ladies?
Ours was more on the coachee side, which would reflect on how well our questioning was to begin with. We didn't want after a conversation, you know how teachers have the meeting after the meeting. So you didn't want a meeting like that to where the teacher went, oh, the coach told me to do this. You want the teacher going, I feel like I need to do this is what I plan, this is what I suggested. So you want them to own it.
Okay.
And that would tell you how well you did in terms of your questioning.
All right, excellent. Okay, the ownership on the side of the person being coached. Outstanding. All right. The next one, expertise and credibility. I believe that's these 2 groups. We start on this side of the room, ladies and gentlemen.
kind of talk about giving the teachers research-based strategies for them to use, not something on Pinterest or any of those teacher sites, which I feel like is a go-to because some teachers don't want to put in the extra work to create their curriculum, and so they grab it, and it's not good things that the students need to be using. We talked about modeling coaching sessions, we talked about using data, making sure you are finding a flow, even in some of our very green teachers, it can be hard, but they need to hear something that they are doing good, build them up a little bit. On the coaching side, they need to be reading and looking at these strategies, reflecting and asking questions and following up with the coach. It's a two-way road, We're not just going there and, giving them stacks of to-dos to cross off.
Absolutely, absolutely. And coaching is not a one and done. A coaching session is not, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to coach Jeannie today, and then go forth and do, Jeannie. I hope it works out. And then I'm going to come in and check on you, because that's not coaching and support. That's monitoring. Okay? Excellent. Thank you. All right?
We had expertise and credibility. We talked about the trust has to be there between the coach and the coachee. And then we really our big thing was those strategies and practices that are research-based, but we talked that we want the teacher to be questioning those strategies like so, and then we need to be asking scaffolding questions to kind of lead them to do those things.
Absolutely. So it's a give and take. The teacher or the person being coached should understand what that would look and sound like in the context of their next lesson and what it could have looked like. You can, if you want to kind of go back and talk about where it could have fit, but then how it's going to help moving forward, right? You want to be careful on the going back piece, but they're going to ask that. So how would that have looked in this lesson, right? Help them think through that. Something else I heard you say, and I heard this group say it too, the idea of research-based. That means you have to prepare, right? And we're not all experts. You clearly told me that we don't want an expert coming and telling us what to write, that we know everything as the coach. But you need to be prepared to support that person in figuring out what to do next. So what are some things? And since we're not all experts in all things, then if we don't know the answer, we have a professional responsibility to go talk to somebody who can help us figure out. So here's what I saw. This is what I'm thinking. Would this make sense in me helping this person to take the next step? All right, excellent. Thank you. All right, last but not least, the coaching behaviors. Let's start here.
I feel like we were very similar to the facilitation and reflective and growth mindset conversation that started this. It's all centered around that questioning.
Okay.
And ensuring that your questions are really helping them drive self-reflection in a focused way, but yet that way you're monitoring your airtime, but you're also kind of interacting with them by kind of paraphrasing what they've said to be sure you're always validating what they're saying, you're always on the same page, showing you're active listening, but really the heart is those questions.
Absolutely.
They are the power and impact in that one.
So what I'm hearing you say is you see some overlap between some of these. They do. They really integrate, right? One with the other. Excellent point. All right, ladies, what's something you guys talked about?
Being able to just actively say back to the person what it is that they're hearing to make sure that you're understanding what it is that they're communicating.
Absolutely, absolutely. How did they think through the lesson? And so being really intentional, and this is where that pre-planning is important, because if you're trying to wing it and you come off with, Melanie, why'd you do that? That's a whole lot different than, so talk to me about how you plan for that, right? There's a whole different tone, a whole different feeling in that question. Would you agree if I was saying that to you? Why'd you do that? Right? Yeah, that'll be it. She's going to might tell me to get out. All right, yes, sir.
I just wanted to add, because I've come across this in these feedback sessions, and you're trying to strategically plan these questions, and you're trying to guide this conversation, so it's a lot of questioning. But I've had teachers say, Mark, just tell me what you want me to do.
Yes, yes.
And you got to avoid that black hole, because once you do that, now you become the expert.
Okay. I think your point is so valid. And so rule of thumb, generally 3 questions. If they can't answer you in 3 questions, you don't pepper them with more questions because they want to answer. And you keep asking, doesn't mean they're going to be able to. So generally the rule of thumb for self-reflective questioning is 3. Start off with a broad question. Hey, what went well for the kids today? What were they able to master? If that's what the session is about. In the case what you're going to see, it's around the teacher's work, right? If you have a really reflective person, that person may go right where you want them to go. They may not. Then you go with, okay, so let's talk about how did you plan for X? That's a little bit more specific. And if still they're not getting there, and this is all around the strength, right? Well, then talk to me a little bit about specifically how did you get these guys to do X, Y, or Z, whatever it is that you're trying to aim for. Same is true on the flip side, right? 3 questions when you're trying to get them to identify that growth point. Guys, in general, if teachers knew better, they'd do better. So don't sit there and say, okay, so what would you do or not what would you do differently? That's not the question I'm talking about. But, okay, so how are we going to fix this? If I knew how to fix it, I would have done it. Help me here. But then oftentimes during the course of conversation, because that's the other thing, this is a conversation, right? And if you're just starting out, it can be a little stilted, but that's okay. Work through that. All right, it's a conversation. The other thing I want to point out, ask for feedback. If you are truly a lead learner, you're sitting there, you're giving feedback to folks, and you're coaching and supporting, ask for feedback on your coaching. And I'm going to be upfront, and here's real life with me. So one of the things that I know when I'm thinking and processing, my face gets really serious. And doesn't mean anything to anybody, but if you're looking at me and, if I'm in Selena's room and I'm processing and I'm trying to script some things down, she might be looking at me going, gosh, I've done something really bad. Look at Kim's face. So your body language, your facial expressions, the visual cues, pay attention. Pay attention, because you don't know until somebody tells you. I'm telling you. All right? All right. So here's what we're going to do. Through all that we've just said, how do we let's take a quick check. I think we hit these. Take a look at the screen real quick. For facilitation of a reflective and growth mindset, did we miss anything up here? How do we do? Thumbs up, thumbs down, how do we do? Okay. What about expertise and credibility? Take a look. We do all right? All right, let's look at the last one. Do okay? Did we miss anything? All right, so we're going to jump into probably what was the reason for you coming here today anyway. So Jeannie, come on up. So what you're going to see, we're going to give you some context. So I want to introduce you to Ms. Jeannie Poston. She's a lead teacher at North Mullins Primary. And we're going to sit down, but I'm going to ask her to start by giving you a little bit of context about the STEP team, which remembers our PLC model that we were in together. All right, are we good to sit down and get started?
Sure.
Okay. And I'm going to be logging into my computer because we did video this PLC session. We used Advanced, by the way. And especially because you already told me rule of thumb is 24 to 48 hours. Well, it's been a week. And so we did not intentionally, this is true, right?
It's absolutely authentic.
Yep. Okay, so we did not talk about it intentionally so that we could talk about it today. Jeannie did go in and reflect in advance, and I made notes so she wouldn't know where I was going to try to go. I didn't want any hints in there.
I saw that.
You saw? So we're going to go ahead and get started. But Jeannie, talk to us a little bit about the PLC that we were in, the STEP team.
To kind of give some back.
Yes, ma'am. Yep.
Okay, so the PLC that I planned last week, I guess it was kind of a rebuilding the team meeting. We've had a couple issues that we've run into, not necessarily with the STEP process, but the team itself. And so I thought it was very important before we could move further with the work and the discover phase that we had to rebuild the team. And so reflecting with my network of lead teachers, Kim Day did the 15% solutions with us. And so I thought that would be a good one to try with this group so that they could support each other and know they're not alone in their challenges.
Excellent. And so as you guys watch, we'd like for you to watch through the lens of the criteria that you examined. So for example, table 1, they were working on the facilitation of the reflective and growth-oriented mindset. So I would like for you to collect evidence around that particular indicator. And the same for each of you, collecting evidence around the indicator that you focused on, and then we're going to debrief this. And again, I have Advanced pulled up. And here's why I'm not going to show this. We talked about doing this because we videoed it, and we want to use her comments, et cetera. But one of the things with the Advanced Feedback Platform that we tell everybody, you control who you share the videos with. And while Jeannie's given me permission, we decided we're not going to just turn around and put it up on a screen for everybody to see, because I think that we thought that kind of goes against kind of what we tell people Advanced stands for. You should be in control of your own video. So that's why we're not putting it up on the screen. So please bear with us with that. Okay, so I'm not going to play it quite yet. So, all right. So Jeannie, thanks for letting me come in. I know, I love that. I love being with you guys. I love being with you guys. And I know that you gave us a little bit of context. You gave me a little bit of context about the objectives. Oh, side note, in your participant guide, you do have, can you hand me the clicker, please? Page 6, thank you. You do have the STEP team meeting agenda, if you would like to look at that as we go through. So I know you and I talked a little bit about the focus for this meeting and sort of why you were going to do that. We kind of brainstormed a little bit about that. And so I know, talk with us a little bit about what were your 2 big goals for the meeting?
Okay, so the 2 big, well, I want to give a little bit more. I want to go back a little bit and reflect. As Kim Day is my coach, when we worked through this problem to try to get to a solution, which we're now here again for the next step, but we realized that we wanted to bring in the facilitator of the STEP team, which is our master teacher. So I wanted to utilize her more. So we kind of talked about a plan for that. And so I met with her prior to this to kind of set the stage so she would know what was coming and, you know, wouldn't be on the spot. So I thought that was very important.
Absolutely.
And so the 2 big goals for this meeting were to reestablish relationships among the team and then develop next steps for collegial visits, because I felt like we're kind of spinning. So I kind of want to get started with that next process.
All right, so when you think about the 2 goals and you think about your PLC members, talk to us a little bit about the outcomes. What did you notice? Kind of how did it go?
I noticed there was laughter. There was collaboration among the team. They were actively listening to each other. They were reflecting, you know, what's working in their classroom and what they're struggling with. And one thing I noticed when they would get to another chart paper to see another member's challenge was, wow, I'm going through that. You know, I'm having that same issue in my classroom. And so they struggled with coming up with solutions. So I was kind of there to facilitate and guide them to thinking of what would work with their classroom.
So absolutely, I noticed the conversations, once they got started with the 15%, started to change,
yes.
Right? So let's just take a look, and then we'll kind of talk a little bit more about the evidence. So on your video, I kind of tagged some places, and you and I tagged some very similar places, I noticed. But the comments that you made kind of resonated, too, with what I was thinking. So just take a look and listen for the conversation here. Okay, so this is one example. So let me stop this. So during the course of the 15% solutions, after you had the guys do the chart, identify their 50% strength piece, and then had everybody to go around and add some suggestions, during the debrief conversation, what I noticed was they were really internalizing some of the things that they heard from their colleagues, because you asked them to choose one thing that they were going to move forward with. And again, going back to what your goal was, right? So the importance of the conversation that I noted, how that supported rebuilding that relationship. They were genuine in, okay, this is something I can really do, you know. And so we heard Paula Keith Page talk about something that she was going to do with the large text. We heard each of the teachers talk about sort of the next step, and you forced them to talk through specific examples, so they really couldn't just give lip service. Right. Is there anything else you noticed there?
I noticed that, well, I know on some of them, they didn't want to share, I guess, necessarily some of the things, so I did want to point out some things that were on there that I thought were valuable to the whole group to hear, because that brought back to the collaboration among the team.
Absolutely. So the facilitation, the structures that you planned for that first component of the meeting was hugely important. It gave them a sense. Go ahead, I can see you talk. Yeah, go ahead.
It was long. It was a 30-minute or more, but I felt that that was very important for this team, and we could not move forward without it. So sometimes you have to do that.
Absolutely,
And
absolutely.
that's why I chose to do that.
Absolutely. So our evidence, again, goes back to the conversations that we heard and the way that they were going to implement those next steps.
And I've seen the chart papers in the classrooms, and they're adding to them.
Absolutely. So you,
I'm seeing progress outside of STEP.
absolutely, because you asked them to take it back so that they could actually not even do sticky notes so that they didn't lose the ideas. Absolutely. So then thinking about the flip side, as you guys continue to go through, and I know you said that first chunk was long, but again, going back to what you told me before about what had happened previously, it did have to happen.
Right.
And I know you did some initial steps outside of step 2, but
Absolutely,
that really
yes.
solidified that. You had 2 other components. The big goal, a second big piece was getting to that initial conversation about what we need to do with collegial visits, just the initial conversation. But you bridge that with the conversation about data and measurement. So talk a little bit about what did you notice during the data measurement conversation?
Well, and I'll give a little context
Okay.
before I share what I did. They have some data and measurement pieces that they're doing, but they're kind of spinning because of the team, the atmosphere within the team. So I kind of didn't want to go there with this session, and so I purposely went with map data, which was current, it was fresh, it was new, and there was kind of there was a positive deviance clearly seen in that data. And so that was my purpose for using the winter scores from the map data
So,
in ELA, which relates to their challenge.
so kind of tying back again to that first objective of rebuilding the relationships, what kind of conversation did you hear when you showed them that data?
Well, and I labeled them teacher A, teacher B, teacher C purposely, I didn't want, but I did give them the opportunity. It is completely up to you as a team, because they wanted to know who was teacher A, who was teacher B, who was teacher C. But they did that themselves. I didn't have to say that. And I had the data, hidden. I mean, it was not out yet, but I said it will be available. And if y'all want to have that conversation, you can have that on your own time. I did not want to set up for that.
Right, and so during the conversation, they were saying, and this was the bridge from starting to rebuild some trust and some positivity to move you into that conversation about collegial
Yes.
visits. They started to say, well, we need to go in that person's classroom. So they really started to have that.
Yes, and one, Ms. Page, she automatically.
Look, I know, that's one of the things I noticed, right? Let's look at that.
She said, well, I want to know what teacher C or F, I want to know what they're doing in their classroom, because they're doing something that's working.
Somebody else did too, do you remember? Who else said something?
Yeah.
Ms. Hines,
Yeah.
right?
So when y'all planned, and y'all, like the other day, y'all did it immediately, like y'all heard, and then y'all did it. So that's when y'all should really like this right. So where's the possibilities down?
That's what it
I didn't put my name on there like that, y'all didn't put it in. Right, but scroll back up. I saw the data from the first 2. And I think Ms. Simmons sent me hers in an email and just didn't go through.
You can go give it to you unless I just tagged a couple, because there was several
Yeah.
places.
And I want y'all to look at these 3 scores and tell me what you think. It's above the district.
It's so competitive.
So I'll stop it there, because this follows
Yeah.
what Ms. Page follows up with, says we
Yeah.
need, and then they all say, yes, we need to do that. So again, those intentional structures from the very beginning, taking them through the 15% solution, through that initial data conversation, and your choice of the student data to push that conversation was very powerful. So that bridged them right on into a conversation about what they thought they needed to begin to think about for collegial visits. So on the flip side, go ahead.
Well, and another piece, we did share the classroom, the mean scores, but I also wanted to share the national, the district, and our school, because, currently at winter, our school is above the district mean, and this team really needed to feel that success, so.
Absolutely. So you're intentional.
That went-
Intentional planning, right?
And that led to the deeper conversations that took place after that.
Absolutely. So as you reflected on this, and I know what you've written in here, is there anything that when you think about the outcomes and what you had identified as goals, things that you want to focus on for next time strengthening to help you guys move forward in the STEP team process? And for the sake of, obviously, their practice and for students.
Well, I think next time, and this may have to be something outside of STEP, but we've got to get like the data piece going.
Okay.
But then I want to continue, like I think an icebreaker, some type of structure in place at the beginning of each one of these STEP meetings.
Okay.
Some of the other teams, you know, they're able to come in and get kind of straight to work.
Okay.
But for this team, it's going to be super important to continue that. So I want to do that. But then one of the teachers shared that before they go out into the classrooms, they kind of want to go video a snippet of that classroom, but then bring it back, you know, during STEP time and watch it together to calibrate. And she didn't use that word, but she described it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so I know as that conversation started taking place, you asked the question, how do we connect what we did with the 15% to the next step in Discover? And you were also helping them focus on the data measurement piece. And they said, well, we need to video. Avril said it. We need to video. We need to watch together. We need to start with our team, which was a huge thing.
Yes.
They didn't want to just go out,
They
right?
did not want to go out.
No, and then branch out is what they
Yes.
said, right? And then they said we need to pick something. We need to have a which was, and all you asked was, how do we connect, right?
And that was not planned. I mean, I guess the structures were in place to lead to that, and the discussion led to that. But it goes back to the relationship it was forming. It was like it was a new team forming right there. So, yeah, they came upon that themselves, that they got to have a focus. And that's one thing, you know, as a facilitator, I've reflected on that they needed, but I couldn't say that.
Right. It's much
I would
stronger
lose that, yes.
for you to guide them to that and have them to figure it out themselves.
Absolutely.
So thinking about what you were trying to aim for with kind of that next conversation, and as I thought about what I observed during the course of the STEP team meeting, and what I know you were trying to get to kind of that next piece with the collegiate visits, again, just the initial conversation, I was really wondering about what would have been the impact if we had taken from that list and had them really to focus on, okay, you just gave me like 4 things, if I'm you talking. What if we take one of those right now and let's think about specifically how we can use that? What do we need to do right now so that we can get started with this the very next time? What do you think?
That's a great idea. Thank you for sharing that.
You really wanted that
That's
last time we were together, didn't you?
Absolutely. So I think that's a good starting point for the next steps, kind of revisit where we were.
Well, I think that would be one possibility, right? And so then something else I was thinking about, that would be one route you could take and get to the same end. The other thing I was thinking and wondering about, you had that conversation about the data measurement plan, and they were talking all around about, you know, okay, I didn't know what the heading was, you know, all those things. This would be another possibility where we could have taken one of those things off that list and said, okay, let's kind of think about what we would have to track for that one thing, just to even start the conversation. We're not collecting anything yet, but we could have right then and there plugged that into that data measurement plan and thought through that one piece.
That one piece.
So which one of those things you think might be the
Probably
starting point?
That one.
That one?
Yeah.
All right. So thinking about, what do we need to do to make that happen? You and me, that's not just you.
Well, I've made sure that the kinks were all worked out of the OneDrive folder where they're housing everything. But I kind of want to go back to the challenge and relate it back to the challenge and like really dig deep, because they've got 2 big things.
Yeah, they do.
And so, you know, as a coach now sitting here live, I've learned some things this weekend.
Okay.
And so I feel that they need to like refocus. I mean, and I try to get them to that a little bit, but I just think like their standards even are really big and broad. So we need to kind of, what is it that's keeping them from moving, the students from moving forward?
Okay, so I hear narrowing that focus. So let's think through the lens of if you have whatever structure you want to use, and I know you've started with the kind of like a generic Excel file. So if you think back and you have them narrowed that one piece, so if we can do that and maybe even start recording it right in that data measurement plan, right? So that kind of, we can always use that as the touchstone, right? What if we then think about what would be the most logical first thing as it relates to the practice, right? What would be the first thing we would need to think about how we might begin to measure that? then that's going to give us what they already told us. Where's my other list here, right? Here it is. That focus that they said they wanted to have. So
Right.
that could be the touchstone
Right.
for that piece. So we narrow the focus for the challenge, but then let's have them think through, okay, if that's what it is in our data and measurement plan, what would be our area of focus as we begin these collegial visits? How are we going to measure that? What are some ways we can do that? What are we expecting to see?
What are the look-fors?
What are the look-fors? And then you can lead into okay, before we can do that, we have to calibrate and do all those things.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, I think that's a good plan.
All right, so how can I support you in that?
Ask me more.
Okay. So what if we were to actually plan this in some of the structure pieces?
Could we plan an example?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Like what it would look like.
Yeah.
And then I think for this team, they may need to see that example.
let's do
And
that.
it might not even relate to their challenge.
Let's pick something that doesn't, so
Okay.
they can't just say,
Yes.
we're going to do
Yes,
that. Okay.
because they could possibly take,
Okay, so maybe not next week, but the week after that, once we
Okay.
get back, we can.
Okay.
Well, actually, why don't we think about, you and I can hammer that out.
Like a
We'll-
virtual.
A virtual thing,
Okay.
because you're going to need this before then.
Yes.
Yeah.
we
So
could do a
the-
virtual and start a Google Doc.
Yeah, because we can do that, because we do that face to face. Okay. All right. So as we wrap up our conversation today, let's talk about what are some of the positives that you heard today in the work that you're doing with your sub team?
Well, the number one is I feel like the team is a team now. And throughout the meeting that day, I kind of just felt like, I don't know why the tribe thing came up, but it did. Our high school are the auctioneers, and they say the strength is within the tribe, and I've heard it. But we're the little auks, like we're the babies before they get to high school. And so I don't know, just something about that day. They just came together, they worked, and so I think I said the strength is within this tribe
You
right
did.
here. And so they kind of like that.
Right? And it goes back to the structures that
Yep.
you put in place.
Absolutely.
All right. So we are going to do a virtual conference, and we can decide that after we finish here.
Okay,
On a
the date.
specific date.
Okay.
All
Thank
right.
you for your support.
Thank you. All right. All right. All right. Where's Selena? Selena, you are up.
Turn my microphone on. I first just want us to thank Jeannie and Kim again, because it is a really vulnerable position to put yourself up here and put yourself on the spot. So I just want to give you guys another round of applause, and thank you so much for really putting yourselves out there and sharing in front of all of us. So now I want us to take some time to think through what we just saw, how that compares to the competencies we've just talked about. So specifically thinking about your coaching competencies that you discussed earlier, the coaching behaviors, the expertise and credibility, the facilitation of a reflective mindset. I'd love to hear from one person from each of those sections to get us started. So from our first three tables that talked about facilitation of a reflective and growth mindset, what was something that you noticed about Kim and Jeannie's coaching conversation right now?
It started out, like Kim was mentioning earlier, it started out with a broad question. How did the meeting go? And so it gave her a chance to really tell how she felt it, and then it would narrow down to, I noticed with 50%, the conversation started to change, and then from there they started using the video, so it's really a narrowing in on what was going on.
Kim, was there any strategy behind how you opened with that question?
Well, just thinking about, you always are looking for an entry point, and we have a relationship where we work together, and honestly, I know this was hard for her to wait, because usually we don't, it's like right after we have a conversation, because she's always eager to, what's the next thing? How do we get this going even better? Because they're already heading in a strong direction. So I always think about the entry point and, asking her, and I can't always do that with everybody, but, just what was your expectation? What did you want to see? So I think about the person that's sitting next to me, and I know what the goals were, but in relation to her, I can ask that question.
Great, thanks. Any other insights or anything else you noticed about Kim and Jeannie's conversation, specifically around facilitating the reflection and the growth mindset?
Yes.
I just noticed the collaborative thread that it was always them. It wasn't one or the other. The discussion was about what the meeting, about the meeting itself, and about the outcomes of the meeting, and then about the next steps. But it was always us, not what are you going to do about it, or what are, how can I help? I mean, the question was, how can I help you? But I mean, there's still statement.
Yeah, that's great. Anything to add on to that, or Jeannie or Kim, do you have anything to add on to that?
You want to add anything? She doesn't hesitate to ask. I will just tell you that. Like she just says, okay, we got to figure something out. Yeah.
Great. How about the expertise and credibility? What did you notice?
It was obvious that she had already reviewed the data and pointed out, before they got to questioning what was going well, she could establish it was a non-threatening atmosphere. She led with the questions she agreed to model for them, not just give them a to-do list for those action items, but she led them enough to get to the consensus and even begin to do it. And this is where I want to go, and this is what I want to do, and that was all about them believing in what she had already presented to them, that they trusted her, so that credibility was there because she had looked at the data. She did it in a non-threatening way with having the teachers label differently. And so they were able to do that and come to that without any blame and be welcoming to the suggestions.
But to add to that, she grew as a coach because in what she did, the team knew the why at the end, but she facilitated through them that where they figured out through the structure that she strategically planned. So she...
You mean Jeannie's role as the coach? Yeah. Yeah.
But the teachers figured it out along with her facilitation without her really telling, because she provided that evidence with that strategic evidence for math.
Yeah. That's an interesting reflection, since you thought about Jeannie as the coach and how she built that expertise and credibility too. Kim, as you prepared, as you mentioned, you were ready. You had looked at the data. You had looked at the video. Can you tell us just briefly how you prepared? Like when you were looking at the video, was there anything in particular that was part of your process?
Well, I always go to kind of what was her expected outcome. I always think about, okay, what is it that she had planned for and that she was wanting them to accomplish, and just kind of, sort of like the same thing with kids, right? You think about what was the end goal, what were they supposed to walk away with, and what were going to be their actionable next steps as it relates to the step process. And so I always start there. We think about that, and then when I plan for these conversations, the evidence, right? So I was fortunate enough to be in there, but also to have the video to go back. But I always think about, okay, what made, for the strength piece, what made the biggest difference for the work being done and them being able to accomplish that next step, the actual objective? What was the evidence for that? So what made the biggest difference? So then I think, what evidence do I have to support whatever I identify as the game changer, really, for their step meeting in this case? And then on the flip side, I think about, okay, what's the one thing that if we're tweaked or changed would help them to continue to move forward in that process? But it also, I have to think about Jeannie, where she is as a coach. She's super reflective, and not everybody's that way. And so that I have to take into consideration too. And it's trying to be intentional about the kind of the give and take between us, and I think that flows pretty smoothly between us. So I think about the strength, what made the biggest difference, but I also think about, okay, what would make, if tweak or change would help make the biggest impact on the outcomes for their meetings.
And as a coachee, that is so important as a coach too. So I'm still, I'm being coached, but I'm a coach too. So what we do together helps me prepare for my coaching cycles or my step team, or, So that's why everybody needs a coach.
Yeah. Great, thank you. How about our last competency area, the coaching behaviors? What did you all notice? I'll just get out of the way.
You can see there, you can definitely see the relationship that they have built in this process. Like Kim would pay close attention to when she kind of started to ask another question, going in a different direction, but she realized that she had more to say, immediately, take a step back. I liked also how when you were at a loss for how to answer her question, you just said, throw me some more questions.
Yep.
Like you can tell there's a huge trust between them.
And I have to do that a lot sometimes, and I will say, tell me more, give me more, and I push for that so that I can grow.
Yeah, and it's clear that there's an ease in a relationship there that makes that happen, that you want between people. But yeah, just a lot of the questions too were big and broad, but also very strategic and like focused on the goal. And you could see that they were big, they got to talking a lot more, but yet they had a focus to them.
Any other observations on the coaching behaviors? I think it was very clear, Jeannie and Kim, that there is a strong relationship between you two. There is a lot of established trust. Can you tell us a little bit about how you built that relationship and established that trust between you two?
Well, she's amazing. I mean, I don't know what else to say, but she has supported us, and I think we just have a really good group of lead teachers, and every time we meet, it's like our favorite time in the world because she's given us these new structures and protocols and like giving us ideas to take back to do with our team. So, and she's always there. Like she'll answer her cell phone anytime during the night or anytime, she's our sounding board. Like she helps us solve our problems.
Well, I think it's a give and take because I do have, by the way, a very awesome group of lead teachers I'm fortunate to be able to support. And it's an opportunity for me to learn as well. And I think you have to remember that. You're a learner in this process too. We can learn from everybody that we get to work with side by side. And I think I had a conversation with somebody the other day about, if you think you've arrived, you probably need to go. Because you always can get better. It's what is the next step? As project coaches, we are focused on growing and we're gonna come observe them coaching so that we can coach ourselves. So again, it's a conversation that we can all take part in so we can all get better together. We have to remember that.
Great. Thank you.
You think?
Yeah. Next question. This is open to everyone from any table. And you might need a minute to think. How will their conversation, how will that impact the STEP facilitator, Jeannie's practice? So how do you think the coaching conversation they just had will impact her facilitating STEP moving forward and her STEP team?
I think that she's definitely going to help grow the understanding of the process with that STEP team. By taking a step back and realizing that she needed to take a step back and refocus. And it's the process might have been very shortly interrupted, but she's picking that up, and that process of learning will continue to grow, which will help the understanding of the outcome.
I think she will continue to be more responsive to the team's needs, especially since they may be a little bit different from the other teams. And I think that's because Kim actually highlighted that as a strength. She kept highlighting that as a strength. And every time she did, she was getting her little dimple.
You usually cry when they do that.
But I think that's going to make her even more responsive because it was named for her.
Yeah. Jeannie, do you have any thoughts on that?
Don't do it.
On your dimples?
I just get very emotional because it's so powerful and this process has been amazing. And I will continue to be responsive to their needs. And I will know immediately if I need to kind of stop and revisit some things. But like I said, I want to continue doing something at the beginning because when we left that meeting that day, and I may cry, just warning you, they said it was the best meeting they'd ever been to. And so I felt a win.
Yeah, it was a win.
Yeah.
Because, you were intentional.
Great. That's great. Thank you for sharing that with us.
I think we got to go to the very last thing, because we're out of time.
Yep.
Yeah, I think we've got to go to the very last thing because we're almost out of time. But I want you to turn and tell the person you're sitting next to what's one thing that you're going to do differently. We don't have time to do a big write it out.
Yeah.
What are you going to do differently as a result of your new learning today? You can if you want to.
You can cry. Is that good?
It was excellent.
Okay. It was so natural, because that's what we would have done in my room.
That's why if we couldn't have any more conversation we already had, because I would have ended up, we would have talked through it.
Yeah.
And I didn't want us to. I wanted us to try to do
I
that.
did too.
Yeah.
That's why I did not hunt you down.
I know. You did great. Thank you so much. I'm going to hug you, but I got to get this thing off first.
I need to do what she did with students, and I need to rebuild a relationship with the few teachers that I'm coaching, because I feel that I may have not done it correctly, so that I don't think it's even pointed enough in the direction I need to build that relationship.
Someone from this side of the room? You're all talking? One next.
I'll share my part.
Oh, great.
Okay, go ahead. You share it then.
I know I need to be more strategic about the questions that I want to ask the teacher before I sit down to eat with them. So it's not just this me under a conversation, it's purposeful, but still collaborative.
Well, thank you all so much, and thank you again, Jeannie and Kim, for really